Is this the most divisive superhero movie ever?
What the hey, dude?
Seriously, I cannot believe the disparity in reactions to Superman now that it's out. There's huge glowing reactions, incredibly harsh reactions. I've seen my Letterboxd friends run the gamut of 5 stars to no stars. People whose opinions I like to read give it praise and scorn in equal measure. Whether it's friends or critics, everyone seems to have a wildly different take on Superman. I haven't seen reactions this polarizing for a superhero movie in a long time. Maybe ever. I couldn't see Superman on opening night and had to watch on for days as everyone's reactions filtered in. I tried to avoid as many spoilers as possible, whilst also letting all the curiosity get the better of me. Could it really be as bad as people are saying? Could it really be as good as people are saying? Well, I've seen Superman 2025. I've seen it twice in fact, and all I can think is...
Finally, some good fucking food.
Finally, a superhero movie on full fat videos without caveats, without me having to say it was good in places, but without me having to compare it to a superhero movie that got it right, did it better. Finally, Superman has brought us a truly great superhero movie again, a feeling I've not felt since, well, the Batman, and oh boy, are we going to get to him in a little while. DC have cooked this decade. Between the Suicide Squad, the Batman, and Superman 2025, they have dominated the top spots and nothing from Marvel Studios has come remotely close.
And that's my greatest strength.
Reviewing these fanboy obsessive franchise type beats is always difficult on a place like YouTube, because more often than not, you get a crop of conspiracy theorists that will believe anything other than the idea that you're giving your honest opinion on the material. If I hated it, well, I'm saying I hated it for views. If I loved it, well, I'm saying I loved it for views. If I felt the same as most people, I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. If I go against the grain of what could be a hot take, then I'm being contrarian for engagement. There really is no winning in these situations, and Superman is more unique than most cases because I simultaneously loved James Gunn's previous superhero work, but haven't been especially stoked for this brand spanking new DC opener. I said back in December that I was underwhelmed by the first trailer, that I didn't especially see the need for a full reboot of the DC universe when Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Gunn's own Suicide Squad had kept it all alive. Not to mention Cavill was back as the Man of Steel at the time. I wasn't particularly wowed by the abundantly bright, washed out grade, or the action, or the guitar riff from the classic Superman theme. Even using it instead of creating something new was a choice I wasn't sold on. But then again, when I look back, I don't think I've loved much of the marketing for James Gunn's superhero movies.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know how this machine worked.
I wasn't wowed by the trailers for Guardians Volume 1, but it turned out to be great. I wasn't particularly hyped by the Suicide Squad trailers, similarly unimpressed with the milky grade, but in the cinema, it all really worked, and it ended up being one of my favourite superhero movies of the 2020s. So even if I wasn't fully sold, it was still all to play for. This would be James Gunn out of his comfort zone. He would no longer be directing an ensemble, no longer making a movie out of a bunch of D-listers for whom their lore was largely malleable. He wouldn't be able to rely on as much of a jukebox score. And whilst to a certain degree Gunn did fall back on some of his Gunnisms for this movie, I think it's a really refreshing change of pace for his work and breaks new strides for his storytelling. It's safe to say Superman has been rocky on film ever since the first 2 Christopher Reeve entries. The character defined the superhero movie, and then saw as others took that idea and ran with it. Superman was left stuck in a creative ditch. Superman Returns was a total misfire. After rewatching Ang Lee's Hulk earlier this year, I was hoping to reappraise this and find something I hadn't when I watched it as a kid. Unfortunately, this was just as boring as it was in 2006. Singer was too close to the material, much like Abrams with The Force Awakens, unable to create anything that could stand on its own 2 feet, little more than a polished homage to the film they grew up with. But hey, at least The Force Awakens is fun. I don't understand how they thought they were going to corner the 2000 superhero crowd with Returns. It has none of the heart or the action of a Raimi, let alone the excitement and depth of Singer's own X-Men films from the period. Dear God, please let Superman punch something. The best part is the messy Lois Lane baby mama love triangle, but even that simmers on a low heat. I don't think any of the casting is that good, especially when this is supposed to be canonically the same world as Christopher Reeve's Kent. How embarrassing to release this just a year after they successfully shunted Batman into a new world with a reset continuity and a modern take. This should have been its own entity entirely. No wonder WB swung the pendulum so far the other way with Man of Steel, for better or worse. I'll probably say better, because Man of Steel was a movie I didn't love at the time, but I've come to appreciate since. I think it's easily the best Snyder DCEU movie, the best Cavill Superman appearance, and easily more entertaining than Returns. Zod is a fantastic villain, and I think the depiction of Krypton is really well realised. The Brave New World angle works, and I think it gives Superman's actualisation as a hero real thrust. It's not exactly what I would want from a Superman movie, and I still think it's a little too morose for its own good, but I can fuck with it. 2025 Superman feels like it takes all the lessons learned from each cinematic outing, as well as the television variants, and concocts something that has respect for the past but takes a swing into new territory. It's got the romance, the heart, the Lex Luthor, as well as the bold Dragon Ball Z action stylings the character needs. I think this is my Superman movie, the one my teenage self would have eaten up back in 2013. This is the Superman movie I would have truly wanted. The movie wastes no time dropping us into the action, with a Star Wars style opening text that surmises how metahumans have been around for 300 years in this universe and have become a standardized part of daily life. Star Wars is a great comparison point across the movie, because even though it looks like our contemporary Earth, it is filled with plenty of weird tech, creatures, pocket universes, and people who are completely comfortable with these miracles. Whilst I have seen the criticism that we're starting too far into a new universe, I actually really dig this approach. It really did work for Star Wars in 1977, and Gunn takes what worked about his cosmic locales in Guardians and simply applies it to Earth. A white Martian is operating a levitating barge for Lex Luthor, and nobody has to explain to the Baravian president how such a thing could be possible. Green Lantern eats breakfast in a diner, undisturbed, looking not dissimilar to Obi-Wan Kenobi, walking into Dexter's diner, decked out in Space Wizard robes. Allowing the universe to simply be weird and wonderful sets it apart from the first contact opening of the DCEU and the emergence of magic and alien life in the MCU. The new DCU is unshackled and can just tell whatever mad shit it wants, and I think that is the best decision when we're trying to jump into exciting new stories. David Corenswet is the best live-action Superman since Christopher Reeve. This is the most exciting, emotionally vulnerable, and human Superman we've had in the last 20 years on the big screen. I don't need Superman to be stoic, and this young novice version of the character, only 3 years into his crime-fighting career, is a delight. Of course he gets frustrated and flustered when Lois questions the geopolitics of him stopping a war with an American ally, no matter how justified he was.
I wasn't representing anybody except for me and doing good.
Or when she points out that he does indeed check social media and gets upset at being mocked. He's not as smooth as Clark Kent in Superman the movie. Lois and Clark's burgeoning relationship is in danger of crashing before it really gets off the ground. As Lois points out, Clark is trusting of everyone. He sees everyone as beautiful, and he goes out of his way to save any creatures great and small, whether it be a massive baby kaiju or a tiny squirrel. I love the Superman's commitment to preserving life and trying to de-escalate as much as possible, but that doesn't simultaneously make him a pushover or incapable of becoming distressed, snappy, or rash in his decision making.
On July 21st, 2025, Iron Mouse, one of the biggest VTubers on the planet, would suddenly and without prior warning post this video titled "Why I Left VShojo," one of the most iconic and recognizable agencies in the industry that she's been with since 2020, so almost 5 years now. It would be in this video that she reveals to the world for the first time ever that VShojo had stolen over $500,000 from her that were meant to go to a charity. Something that even a comic book supervillain wouldn't think of doing. But it only got worse from here. Soon enough, you'd have previous and current talents of VShojo, as well as some other very prominent VTubers in the industry, reveal to us how VShojo was behind the scenes, how they were mistreated, and how this once iconic company was nothing more than a facade, hiding behind it an extremely toxic and disastrous management that was leading it. But some of these crazy revelations, these bombshells that these VTuber talents were telling us, occurred years ago, making us revisit past controversies and incidents that this company was in and see it from a completely different perspective now with this new added context. This is why, in order to truly understand the depth of this catastrophe, I had no choice but to go back to the absolute beginning, even before VShojo was founded, even talking about the origins of its CEO, Gunrun. And this 2-hour video is the result of that. We're going to be going through all the major lows and highs of VShojo all the way to its very violent and sudden death. I say this with no exaggeration. This is the biggest VTuber related controversy in history, and it's not even close. So without further ado, let's talk about it. The dot-com crash was a catastrophic financial incident that took place in the US around the year 2000. You see, the World Wide Web had been introduced in the early 1990s, and early adopters would quickly understand that this was going to change life as we know it. So all of a sudden, the word internet held a lot of weight. I mean, this was going to change the world. So obviously, if a company was going to operate on that internet, then it was going to be a part of this new world order that stands to be very profitable. This is when investors would decide to throw stacks of cash at any company claiming to operate on the internet. There was truly no need to dive into any specifics about how they were operating, their costs, and how they planned to make money. Just the fact that they were on the internet meant that they were going to be successful because this was going to change the world. Soon enough, the word internet would lose all meaning, becoming a buzzword like AI is in 2025. If a company claims to have AI in their product, then their stock skyrockets in a day. It's ridiculous. And so, after years of euphoria and investing in anything internet related, investors would realize at the end of 2000 that many of these businesses weren't even generating any revenue. They literally had no way to make money. So everyone started panic selling at the same time, causing the bubble to literally burst. The majority of these companies went extinct and very few survived. This would actually be quite similar to what happened with live streaming websites, although on an extremely smaller scale and not affecting any global financial institutions. I mean, have you ever heard of the website BattleCam? No? Well, that's normal, but don't bother Googling it because it doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. But at the time when it was founded in the early 2000s, it had a proper community and a sizable amount of streamers, competing against each other in challenges in order to win cash prizes. And while the majority of things related to this website were lost to history, one of the only things we still have left is a clip of Keemstar crying when he was shown a picture of how bad his balding had become. And speaking of Keemstar, in this now very infamous clip, he would start off his rant saying, "F this, I'm on Block TV with my hands up," referring to yet another streaming website that was lost to history. In the early 2000s, there were so many of these, but unfortunately, 99% of these websites would cease to exist, and many would be lost to history, except one in particular, Justin.tv. It was founded in the year 2007 and was named after its founder, Justin Kan. But initially, you couldn't even stream on the website. Only Justin could. Its entire purpose was centered around Justin and him live streaming his entire life. He called it life casting. Today, we call it IRL streaming. And when I say that he would stream everything, I mean it. I mean, this is him sleeping right here. And during this interview, he's literally live with his apparatus that he made himself. Eventually, this trend of live casting would catch on, and Justin TV would allow anyone to create an account and broadcast themselves live to, well, a group of strangers. And as the platform continued to grow beyond anyone's expectations, in 2011, it would come up with a decision that would change everything forever. The creation of Twitch.tv, a separate website from Justin.tv that was not only centered on just live streaming, but more specifically centered on live streaming video games. But early on, after Twitch.tv had been created, the best way I could describe how the website functioned was more like a Discord server, in the sense that everyone kind of knew each other. Everyone knew who the most prominent streamers were, but more importantly, Twitch staff was very approachable. They'd always be in someone's chat, making the streamers feel like they were really part of a community. And at the time, what really differentiated Twitch from other websites was their global emotes. You could use these in any streamer's chat and you wouldn't have to pay a single thing. But what was really interesting here is that many of the early emotes were inside jokes that only people on the website would understand. One form of these inside jokes was creating emotes out of Twitch staff in funny pictures, like this one right here by the name of Anele. This was one of the earliest employees at Twitch. And another emote that you'd find that was based on a staff member as well was the gun run emote. What made this emote special is that whenever you saw a streamer encounter some sort of technical difficulty, the chat would start spamming it as a way to summon Gun Run himself, the staff member that the emote was based on. He was seen as a genius who understood live streaming like no one else. In fact, when Business Insider went to Twitch to visit their office and create an article on the people who work there, the first image you're greeted with when you click on the article is Gun Run himself, sitting on his desk, smiling. This is how Business Insider would describe him, saying, Justin the Gun Run Ignacio went from esports fanboy to streaming guru by the time he was 21. Twitch hired him out of college to help run thousands of simultaneous video streams and orchestrate the tech for its signature tournaments. In 2013, Forbes named Ignacio in its 30 under 30 games list. So yeah, no big deal. This guy was just kind of a genius. He'd be single-handedly helping Twitch run these massive streams of hundreds of thousands of viewers watching tournaments from Dota 2 and League of Legends, for example. And additionally, he was in the Forbes 30 under 30 list for 2014, which is a list made up of 30 people who are under the age of 30 that have been a huge influence in their respective industry. Not bad for a 21-year-old. But if that wasn't enough, he was also taking Justin Khan's vision to the next level, creating a backpack filled to the brim with technology that could withstand streaming IRL at high resolution with no interruptions. He called it the Gun Run IRL Backpack. Overall, as time would go by, Twitch and its staff would get a lot of attention. Forbes would be calling it the ESPN of video games. It seemed unstoppable. So much so that even Amazon took notice and eventually bought the website for $970 million on August 26, 2014, making its founders very rich but also ending its tight-knit culture centered around staff and streamers, transforming it into a very corporatized company. After this buyout, Gunrun would keep working at Twitch for the next few years. He would also keep developing his Gunrun IRL backpack and would create the company Unlimited IRL that sells these backpacks straight up to streamers who want to stream IRL with high quality and no interruptions. And while I'm sure his life was going good and he was achieving things that he found fulfilling, there would come a time where his life, and pretty much almost every human's life, would change forever, making many of us divert to places that we never thought we'd end up in. And that would be none other than the COVID 2020 pandemic. During the pandemic, many people were isolated and couldn't do much outside. This meant that for many, in order to stay sane to some degree, they had to keep themselves entertained, and the only way to do that was through the internet. This completely skewed the numbers on so many things, Genshin Impact being an example, launching at the end of 2020 and getting so many players that it had made over $1 billion in under 6 months. But video games wouldn't be the only thing that would go up in numbers substantially. Entertainment of all kinds would skyrocket, including streaming. This also included a fairly new genre of streaming, which was VTubing. You see, the pioneer of VTubing was none other than Kizuna Ai, starting her activities at the end of 2016. Unlike Hatsune Miku, which is a virtual being run by a team of people and a corporation, Kizuna Ai was actually a person, except that person was using a virtual avatar to express themselves. And even though she was a streamer, much of her brand was centered around the Japanese idol template. She wasn't just a streamer, she could sing and she could perform. She behaved like an idol, and the expectations of an idol were laid upon her shoulders. But for years to come after 2016, VTubing would really remain a very Japanese-centric form of entertainment. This would change in 2020 when many content creators and, well, many people in general would start using VR chat in order to combat isolation. Seeing so many people express themselves through avatars would make the idea of a VTuber way less weird than it used to be. This would contribute to how VTubing would start to all of a sudden blow up beyond proportion. But of course, the ones that would benefit the most and the quickest would be the two biggest VTuber corporations on the planet, both based in Japan and already possessing a big established talent roster. They would go by the names of Hololive and Nijisanji. They were absolutely dominating streaming in ways that people could have never imagined. And to give you an idea of just how much VTubing had blown up, when Nijisanji first went public on the Japanese stock market, it was valued at $1.1 billion. Yes, a VTuber agency valued at $1.1 billion. These are not rookie numbers by any means. VTubing was very hard to ignore at that point. So much so that even popular streamers that would have never delved into this before saw the potential and tried to do some VTubing themselves, trying to snatch a piece of that pie. Look, it was safe to say that by that point, there was global demand for VTubers. It wasn't centered on Japan anymore. And while that was really exciting, it also kind of came with a problem. Ever since Kizuna Ai, VTubers were seen like idols. So these Japanese idol expectations came with being a VTuber when you worked for these two corporations. This meant that they owned everything, even your model. If you were to graduate, which is a Japanese idol way to say retire, then you wouldn't get to keep your model. You would lose your entire identity because it belongs to the corporation. Additionally, it was cool to see these corporations expand to English-speaking talent, but even though this industry was blowing up, there was no real agency in the West. Gunrun would see this as clear as day, which is why on November 24th, 2020, he would announce the creation of the talent agency VShoujo, a San Francisco-based VTuber talent agency with its main goal being centered around talent freedom, allowing any talent that chooses to leave the company in the future to retain their full IP and model, as well as their brand in general. He would co-found this company with Mountain Dew, who was a content creator, and would hold the post of Chief Marketing Officer at VShoujo, and Daniel Sanders, which would be their third and final co-founder. He would hold the position of Chief Operating Officer and would sometimes act as the Chief Financial Officer. Now, what really made VShoujo special was the fact that their founding members were already very well established in the VTubing community as independent VTubers. This was completely different from corporations like Nijisanji and Hololive, with every talent starting from scratch with a new identity when they were hired there. Here you had 7 very prominent VTubers carrying over their identity into VShoujo and having their already substantial communities follow them. The founding members were Nyaners, Zentreya, Iron Mouse, Silverveil, Project Melody, Apricot Fruit, and Himehajime. A few months later, they would also add Weibei to their roster, another independent VTuber with a substantial community. This wasn't just another VTuber agency. This was one that had the potential to not only revolutionize the VTubing industry as we knew it, but to also compete head-to-head with the big two, which were Hololive and Nijisanji, without being a Japanese corporation. And I mean, why wouldn't they? They had the genius Forbes 30 Under 30 CEO, and they had top-tier talent, some of the best in the industry. It normally should have been smooth sailing from here. But unfortunately, barely a year after being established, VShoujo would face a monumental controversy that would significantly stain its reputation in the VTubing industry. Nuxtaku is a content creator turned VTuber that heavily benefited from the VTuber boom of the pandemic. He was one of the first independent VTubers to ever reach 2 million subscribers on YouTube, and his most successful content would be centered on collaborations, anime critiques, and of course, Mr. Beast style content in which he would donate to people on Twitch in order to get them to do challenges. His rise to fame was very quick. He practically knew everyone in the VTuber industry, and he had a very mutually beneficial relationship with VShoujo talents, collaborating with them on many occasions, and by that point be making content with them quite regularly. However, on October 20th, 2021, to everyone's surprise, he would tweet this out, saying, "Someone is trying to dox VTubers by masquerading as VShoujo. I can't say more at this time, but please share this around and be careful. They tried to dox me, but I sniffed them out and gave them wrong info, so don't worry about me. I spoke to the CEO of VShoujo and I'm trying to untangle everything. I'll update you when I can." You see, VShoujo's domain was vshoujo.com, that's what they used for their emails. But there was someone impersonating VShoujo staff sending emails to VTubers under the vshoujo.org domain, hoping to gain their trust and doxing them, uncovering their real names, addresses, and eventually swatting them. Now, Nux was already quite popular. He would have many people try to dox him, he already knew what to do. Unfortunately though, that doesn't apply to everyone. A smaller VTuber by the name of Saki Nightshade would tweet this out around the same time, saying, "Today may have been the most exciting day I've had in a couple of years. Holy fuck, my emotions are off the charts right now, what a day. Unfortunately, I don't think I can elaborate, which makes me extremely sad." She then goes on to say, "Alright, so what I can say is that I've been contacted for something amazing, and if all goes well, it could be truly life-changing. If that doesn't answer questions, I'm so sorry, I'd like to not say anything else about it." So that person, posing as VShoujo staff under the vshoujo.org domain, had sent an email to Saki saying, "We want to recruit you to VShoujo," raising her hopes up and demanding personal information, which she gave. The day after, she would tweet this out, saying, "Well, the group of people who've targeted Nyaners and leaked her info earlier have my info and sent the cops to my door earlier. They're threatening to do more. Other than the threats to leak my info, they aren't saying much else. I guess I should have figured it'd be too good to be true. Oh well, not much can be done." And we can see Nux in the replies saying, "DM me please." So that was the situation. Very messy, very tricky, and very nasty. And Saki gave out a very important piece of information. The group of people targeting her were the same people who had doxed an important member of Vishoujo, Nyaners, earlier, leaking some of her personal information, but at this point we didn't know just how much. 11 days later, Nux would tweet, "The last 10 days were the most insane of my life. No words could describe how appreciative I am of you and the friends I've made here. Can't wait until I show you everything. I'm changing the game, boy." Teasing something that was in the works. Over the next few weeks, he would keep teasing something that was about to release, and on November 22nd, almost a month after he had received that phishing email, he would tweet out, "Recently, there was a group of doxers that have been harassing VTubers and swatting them by impersonating Vishoujo. We spent the last month tracking them down. Please share this video." With the video being titled, "I caught a swatter that doxed 12 VTubers, myself included." In it, he would talk about how the email scam worked, how Saki Nightshade was affected, and then would go on to give us information that we didn't know about, which is how 12 VTubers got doxed when we only knew of 2, and how Nux had gained footage of the doxer in a call with a bunch of friends because one of those friends happened to be a Nux fan and was willing to backstab the doxer. And finally, he would specify that that doxer was facing jail time, and if anyone had the same idea of doxing VTubers, they would end up in handcuffs as well. Additionally, when the video was initially posted, Vishoujo themselves, their official page, had replied saying, "Thank you Nux for working with us, we've added our own response to the events," specifying that during this, no information was breached from Vishoujo, and that the fake domain was taken down. It was never going to be used for harmful things ever again. Overall, it seemed like Nux had taken the time to make a detailed video of the events, and that Vishoujo as an agency not only approved of it, but was able to get through this thanks to this cooperation. So imagine the shock when all of a sudden, almost every single VTuber talent at Vishoujo would speak out against the video and tell the world how disappointed they are in Nux for releasing it. This same sentiment would of course be echoed by their communities, and it had reached a point where Nux was forced to make a response, tweeting RE cybersecurity/doxing incident, read, linking a twit longer. And before we even get to the twit longer, on this post you can see Vishoujo members stating publicly how disappointed they were with Nux and his actions. Iron Mouse would say that she was so disappointed and hurt that he was doing this when he full well knew what was truly going on. "We asked you to take it down, we told you we feared for our safety and you didn't care." Fruit would say, "Asking for you to take it down because I felt my safety was in trouble and for you to go to the company and ask for numerous terms and conditions in return, that's not friendship." Silverveil, Vey, Zentrea, Hime, and Melody would all echo the same statement, publicly announcing that not only were they disappointed with Nux, but that he was a liar, a clout chaser, and someone that didn't care about any of his friends at Vishoujo. With Hime saying that the girls had begged for days for this video to be removed out of fear for their safety, and Project Melody saying, "He flagrantly disregarded our team's feelings and the facts our security department shared with him." But the biggest response was from Nyaners, who wrote a huge message in her Discord denouncing Nux's actions and expressing how disappointed she was with what he did, saying, "Didn't want to have to type out something stressful like this on what was supposed to be a chill Sunday and my only day off so far this week, but I do not condone the video that Nux has released where he postures himself as our savior and seemingly takes credit for pretty much an entire year's worth of painstaking work done by Vishoujo's cybersecurity team. I would know that it took that long and took that much work since I was one of the people who unfortunately had to work with them, and I'm incredibly thankful for their help. Whether or not any of the information he gathered helped or not is beside the point, as releasing a video like he did about a very sensitive and potentially dangerous situation that involves me and many of my friends only draws unneeded attention to it for some quick views, when if a video were to be made about this at all, it should have been handled with a lot more care and consideration. But for someone like Nux, who has consistently used my friends for clickbait views and has done things like try to bait my friend into watching the Logan Paul Suicide Forest video on stream, and secretly recorded a private call with another one of my friends without permission and then proceeded to use said call to make a video, it's clear that our safety or feelings about any of this is not the priority. The past year was the issue carefully at all. There's a repeat general situation goes out to anyone else who was this was one hell of a statement. This wasn't just about Nux releasing a video that the talents at Vishoujo didn't want released. It seems like they've had a problem with him for a long time with how he uses. These people collabed all the time. It seemed like they were friends. Nux, on the other hand, would keep his statement shorter than Nyaners, but would still manage to drop some pretty big bombshells, saying, "This has been a stressful week for many, and I'm confident and proud of the community and the efforts that went towards resolving things efficiently. My latest video concerned submission and doxing themselves and getting swatted. With the efforts of everyone involved, I believe this situation can be put behind us. Awareness of phishing situation, and you should all read it in response to my rumors that I had posted it. I was a part of and one of them on anyone statement someone would make during did mention that at least just a few hours before this twit longer, and it would be after they stealthily deleted their reply to his initial video tweet. But that's not all. This new cybersecurity statement had a completely statements reviews by parties that have no be unrelated to phishing and provide for less to partners shade. Things were getting very weird. It's like they were completely discrediting the person they were congratulating when the video came out. But things only got weirder from here. After Vishojo had released their official cybersecurity statement, Nyaners would have this to say in her Discord. Vishojo was forced into making a statement on the matter after asking him repeatedly not to release this video. They had to issue corrections to the video since he would not, and there were several inaccuracies within the video, and had to word the statement back into a court. I'm exhausted of pissing me. It sucks and I don't horribly bad action had to be kept to more attention to many people. I don't say something. So far, the Vishojo account had given its stamp of approval to Nux and thanked him for working with them when the talents were so clearly against the idea of a video. Something simply wasn't adding up at all. Something was missing, a big piece of the puzzle, and no one really knew what the hell it was. At this point though, Nux as a target was fair game. According to every Vishojo talent, he had done something horrendous. So of course, just like with any cancellation, other people started piling up on him, talking about their bad experiences with him. And very few people actually took a step back and said, hey guys, listen, maybe we're going a bit too far here. Maybe we don't have all the facts. The situation was getting so critical that Nux had to release a formal apology. But in this apology video, he would show Discord logs between him and the cybersecurity expert that Vishojo had hired, Phoenix. He would reveal that these logs were in a group chat with one of the Vishojo girls and Gunrun, the CEO. In these logs, you could see that Nux was working on a video and Phoenix was fully aware of it. But instead of telling him, please don't post this, you're putting our talents in danger, he would be sent a draft of the video and he'd say this: not trying to downplay or anything, I really appreciate that you were providing info at 7:03. Do you think you'd be willing to blur out the word blank from the screenshot for the purposes of denying them notoriety? To which Nux said, okay, I can do that. Phoenix would then say, I appreciate that you are doing the public service announcement and that isn't the problem at all. My comment is narrowly specifically about praising that one fan that reached out. I am 99% certain that is a fellow member of the harassment gang and not a fan. So Phoenix's problem wasn't the video at all. He was completely down with the idea. He just thought that that fan who had leaked the doxer to Nux was actually part of the harassment gang and Nux was being socially engineered. At some point, Nux would say, honestly, I think this video will be helpful to you as well. If you need help with anything, feel free to reach out. To which Phoenix would say, thanks a lot. Would you be willing to include a link to a written response by us as well? It's not going to be anything against the video. It's going to be more about making sure people don't think that contract language is real and answer some likely FAQs that will result from all this. To which Nux said, of course. And of course, as you can see, this was their reply that they had deleted shortly afterwards. This video added even more confusion to the whole situation, because from these logs, it seemed like two people were working together, and the CEO was very well aware of it, and one of the girls that had called Nux out publicly was in this group chat seeing everything, very well aware of the fact that he was going to post this video. And thanks to Fruit leaking her DMs with Nux at some point on Twitter, she would accidentally reveal who that Vishojo talent was, and it would turn out to be Project Melody. In these DMs, we can see Fruit and Nux arguing, and at some point Nux says, I'm not sure what you mean. I had a group chat with Melody, Gunrun, and their head cybersecurity guy, and I showed them the video beforehand. They had a few notes, which I changed before uploading, and they asked me to link a statement they would write in the description. But that's so weird. As you saw earlier, and they asked me to link a statement they would write in the description.
I will be praised for this, right?
But that's so weird. As you saw earlier, Melody had posted a tweet calling him out, saying, I'm hurt Nux posted his doxing vid. He flagrantly disregarded our team's feelings and the facts our security department shared with him. I trusted and defended him only to feel secondary to getting clicks. If he meant to raise awareness to protect streamers, he would have corrected it. But she, as well as Gunrun and Phoenix, were in a call with Nux for 4 hours. This wasn't just confusion anymore. Someone was lying here. After these DMs would leak thanks to Fruit, Project Melody would delete her tweet because of the hate she would start getting. And shortly afterwards, apologies would start raining in. Fruit would say, Nux apologized to me privately yesterday as I apologized to him for subtweeting, and others would follow suit. Except one person in particular who was practically seen as the biggest backstabber in all this, Project Melody. She didn't make any public statements or apologies regarding this incident, and as far as we know, did not do so privately either. Nux has never mentioned this. It was especially weird since Nux had collabed with her the most out of anyone in Vishojo, and they've had a multi-year friendship. But by that point, the drama had been going on for quite a while now. The talents clearly just wanted to move on and get back to creating content, and it seemed like the community was heading in that direction too. But as things were finally starting to heal, Gunrun would make it a point to post this article on Medium.com saying, "Addressing miscommunications, I hope this clears the air on the confusion, let's move forward together and not spread hate." This would be an article attempting to show that Vishoujo already knew about the security accusations, did not condone Nux in any way, and was always behind their talents, while of course acknowledging some wrongdoings in the process. But they would refute the allegation that Vishoujo gave Nux approval to release his video, saying that the reality is that Vishoujo never at any point said that he had permission, nor were we asked. Vishoujo was given limited time to suggest edits and create a statement. Politeness in Twitter reply text was misconstrued as approval/endorsement. Suggestions for edits were ignored beyond blurring of some names, and Phoenix makes efforts to educate Nux on why this is a bad move, which are ignored. But this wasn't just it. Gunrun also added more fuel to the fire by saying, "Staff's context. There is a negative history of interaction between Vishoujo and Nux that led us to proceed with extreme caution." Something that had yet again come out of nowhere because, as I said earlier, people were under the impression that they were all friends. Gunrun would then post the full conversations that Nux had shown in his video, and in the first one it would be Phoenix imploring Nux not to fall for the bait of that one fan who reached out to him because it's not random. Their MO is to do this good cop, bad cop thing. But Nux wasn't having any of it. He was convinced it was a fan, he wasn't being socially engineered at any point. This showed us that Nux was stubborn, and even though he understood some aspects of doxing, was very naive, sure. But never at any point in time did Phoenix express that he didn't want Nux to release the video, only sending him timestamps to change things. Gunrun would conclude this by saying, "We hope clearing the air here with our context helps put this drama behind all of us. I'm understanding of Nux's stance and hope our detailing from our side helps put everything into context. We do not wish to see this matter escalate further, do not send hate or harassment to anyone. We're looking forward to continuing work as usual and hope all fandoms can see the many perspectives of this complicated interaction between Vishoujo and Nux. Thanks everyone for reading. Gunrun." Of course, as is the trend with this controversy, people were left even more confused after reading this. When you say something like, "Thank you Nux for working with us," how is that not a way of you saying that you approve of the video? It just didn't make any sense. Finally, Nux would post a video titled "Moving Forward" on his second channel and would detail how throughout the entire week of him releasing the video he was barely sleeping, having anxiety attacks, and overall really showing us that no one here, including the Vishoujo talents, had a good time. But even though I'm sure many people were hoping that things would die down there were still way too many questions surrounding this whole incident. A lot of things simply didn't make any sense, causing many YouTubers like Turkey Tom to make videos about this whole mystery surrounding this incident and garnering over 1.2 million views. People weren't satisfied with how this concluded, and you can see that the top reply on Gunrun's post to Medium was Omni saying, "At least apologize to the dude?" He got dragged for the past 2 days, and the deleted thank you tweet made it even worse. Nux took accountability, only fair to do the same, methinks. People had many theories as to what had happened, how this miscommunication could have occurred. One of the most common ones that was even mentioned in Turkey Tom's video about the situation was that Nux Taku was in the process of founding his own VTuber agency at the time. Vishoujo's management saw this as a threat, so they took the opportunity to character assassinate him in public, making him seem very problematic and making other VTubers not want to associate with him. Now look, I'll admit, when I first heard this theory, I thought, come on, this is way too far-fetched. But you have to remember that the VTubing scene back then was so much smaller than it is today. And Nux was at the absolute top. The guy had 2 million subscribers as a VTuber. He knew everyone in the scene. No one didn't know who he was. He could have so easily made an agency that directly competed with Vishoujo. But would Vishoujo's management, as well as Project Melody, his friend of multiple years, truly stoop this low in order to take down a potential competitor? Honestly, as someone who's covered the VTubing industry for a while now, that's not even the craziest thing I heard this week. But I think if we're going to take a more realistic approach with all the evidence we currently have, then what most likely happened is that Vishoujo was totally down with the idea of letting Nux post the video. This tweet was sincere. However, when management saw how much this pissed off the talent, how they were completely against the idea of this video, they did a full 180, deleted the tweet, and backstabbed Nux into being the fall guy so that they wouldn't piss off their talents. When reading Nyanner's messages, it seemed like she had a very strong negative impression of Nux, saying things like, "He doesn't care about helping us. If he did, he would have listened to several of our concerns when it came to how he treats people and uses them for content." Something echoed by other Vishoujo talents when it came to criticizing him. It seemed like someone was getting some very wrong information, and maybe Nux wasn't the only victim here, the talents were too, they just had no idea. Regardless though, back then, no one really bothered delving that deep, instead preferring to go either Team Nux or Team Vishoujo, with Team Nux claiming that Nux had done nothing wrong, that he was the victim here, and with Team Vishoujo being convinced that Nux is a clout chaser that doesn't care about anyone but himself. The whole thing would truly stain Vishoujo's reputation and show them as unprofessional. How could they ever compete with the likes of Hololive when they never had such weird petty drama? How could they compete with Nijisanji when none of the talents would ever dare to make a public statement criticizing another VTuber like that? Maybe talent freedom was a mistake. With just one controversy, Vishoujo had gone from hopeful contender to yet another talent agency that could never compete with the professionalism of Japan. But hey, while this would definitely be damaging to their reputation and be brought up multiple times by haters in the future, the internet has very short-term memory. Give it 1 or 2 weeks and even the most major dramas get forgotten. And so after 2021 had ended, Vishoujo had somewhat been able to put itself back on the map in a very strong way. During 2022, Iron Mouse, a VTuber under Vishoujo, would grow so quickly that even the mainstream outside of the VTubing community was made aware of her existence. On February 5th, 2022, she would hold her first ever subathon, streaming for 30 days straight and garnering over 171,000 Twitch subscribers. That equates to over $850,000 before Twitch takes their cut. Articles like this were being written about her, saying that she was breaking all kinds of Twitch records. By that point, you'd see people who didn't even know what VTubing was hearing about Iron Mouse's success. And if you didn't, well, Vishoujo made it a goal to make you hear about her and every other talent in the roster, enlisting Crunchyroll to interview every single one of them while having them talk about their favorite animes of all time. But that's not all. When it came to VTuber-related awards, the Vishoujo girls were dominating, with the Streamy Awards having 5 nominees and 4 of them being from Vishoujo. That's not all though, because the Streamer Awards would have 4 nominees and 3 of them would end up being from Vishoujo. They wouldn't win that year, but it was still very notable. But regardless, the efforts of these talents, including Iron Mouse's very successful subathon, the Vishoujo girls being nominated practically everywhere, and Vishoujo's efforts to make marketing a priority, ended up being somewhat of a success, because the CEO was able to raise over $11 million for the company. More specifically, during seed funding led by Athos Capital with participation from GFR Funds and Green Bay Ventures. Yes, Vishoujo, a VTuber talent agency, had somehow secured an 8-figure funding round from venture capital, infamously known for wanting to get their money back no matter what, and also only known to invest in companies with long-term growth potential. They didn't just invest in anything, which made many believe, well, shit, Vishoujo must be doing something right compared to other agencies because wow, that's very impressive. And Gunrun, of course, with this announcement showed huge confidence, saying VTubers are the future of the content creator industry. Adding, since the medium is built upon animated personas, it is more accessible and scalable than being a traditional creator, especially as the technology becomes more widespread. With the funding from Anthos Capital, we are now in a better position to support and grow talent in this market with more innovative technology, extensive promotion, and the ability to assist with content creation and distribution. So this money was going to go towards specifically growing their existing talent roster, pretty much any VTuber's dream at the time. And speaking of VTubers, a few months after raising $11 million, Vishoujo would add 2 more talents to its roster, marking their first major expansion since recruiting Veibe in 2021, adding both Kei-san and Amamiya Nazuna to their roster. And what made these talents special is that they were based in Japan and spoke Japanese most of the time on their streams, showing us that Vishoujo wasn't just interested in English speakers, they were interested in this talent-first approach globally, with Gunrun saying that this expansion will break down barriers in VTubing. And it kinda did. On her first stream after joining Vishoujo, Amamiya Nazuna would get over 30,000 concurrent viewers on her Twitch stream, while Kei-san would also receive just as many, if not a bit more, with her YouTube debut being at almost 1 million views today. At the same time, Vishoujo wasn't lying, they were truly putting those $11 million to use, putting their existing talent at the center of some very cool projects, be it animated music videos or just straight up general marketing. By the end of 2022, Vishoujo was yet again seen as an agency that could someday compete directly with Hololive and Nijisanji if they weren't already. Yeah, sure, they've been through a very big controversy with Nux that put everything into question, but whatever, that's behind us. They got 2 more talents, raised over $11 million, and were doing some amazing things that made everyone else envious. Things could only get better from here, right? Well, you know how it goes. Good times don't last forever. And very shortly after 2023 had begun, Vishoujo would find itself in such an unpleasant situation that to many, it seemed like this was going to be their biggest existential threat yet. Harry Potter is a series of books that needs no introduction. It's critically acclaimed across the world. The same can be said about the movies that were based on those same books. This of course resulted in having a very large and extremely passionate fan base all across the globe. The person behind these books is none other than J.K. Rowling, and for most of her career she was loved by pretty much anyone who loved Harry Potter. Her humble background as well as her authenticity truly made it hard to dislike her. But then one day, just like many other celebrities, she decided to take the decision of splitting her audience in half by becoming political. You see, in 2011, the Syrian population would revolt against its current regime. The result would be a civil war that would last for over a decade, destroying huge chunks of the country and spreading Syrian refugees all across the world. It would be dubbed the Syrian refugee crisis. And at a certain point, political voices in Europe specifically would start expressing that the infrastructure of their countries could barely support their current population, that they were not fit to take in so many millions of refugees, trying their best to stop them. J.K. Rowling would see this and would take the decision to use her platform to show solidarity with every single refugee coming to her country, tweeting, "If you can't imagine yourself in one of those boats," the boats the refugees were using, "you have something missing. They are dying for a life worth living. #refugees welcome." Half her audience found her to be hypocritical, saying things like, "Well, if you want refugees, then why don't you take any in your massive mansion?" And the other half was fully in support, praising her and really admiring the fact that she would use her platform for such a humanitarian cause. 5 years later, though, J.K. Rowling would take on a stance that wouldn't just split her audience in half, it would more accurately shatter them into 1,000 pieces. She would criticize an article for using the term people who menstruate, saying, "I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumben, wimpend, wumid," implying that there's a word for this, it's called women, and that people who menstruate is a silly term. People, specifically the audience that had supported her so staunchly during her 2015 moral stance, were outraged. But J.K. Rowling doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. Honestly, she went all the way to the moon, saying things like, "If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth." Over the years, she wouldn't let this topic go, and this would result in her creating a substantial amount of haters that used to be her ex-fans, ones that were particularly very loud on the internet. So on September 16th, 2020, when Hogwarts Legacy, a game developed by Warner Bros., was announced, Harry Potter fans all around the world were extremely excited because this actually looked good. It wasn't one of those crap movie games that looked like they were done on a budget over a year. You'd actually be able to explore Hogwarts here and actually become a wizard just like in the movies and the books. But when the game was heading towards its release on February 10th, 2023, those J.K. Rowling haters had another idea. This post on Gaming Circle Jerk would be one of many, saying, "A friendly reminder from your mod team that this woman is a TERF and anyone who pledges to support her monetarily is also a transphobe." TERF being an acronym meaning Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, a term that J.K. Rowling had used openly in order to describe her beliefs. This post was made by a mod of the Gaming Circle Jerk subreddit. These people boycotting the game shifted their attention to the people who bought it. More specifically, people who were making content about it, helping spread the word about how good of a game it was. This is when the Hogwarts Legacy harassment campaign would begin. And you had people like this individual make an entire website where you could put the username of a streamer and it would tell you if they played that wizard game. This was taken to the absolute extreme. And here's just one example. The channel Girlfriend Reviews features a couple playing games, and the chat was harassing them so much throughout their playthrough that the girlfriend in question started crying and ended the stream. Bear in mind, this was a streamer who had a donation link to a charity that helped the LGBT directly, but these fanatics made no differentiation. And one of the people who had suffered the most from harassment and other disgusting things in relation to her playing the game was none other than the Vishojo talent Silverveil, being absolutely harassed to tears just for having played the game. Here's a clip of that in which she describes what she's been going through just for having launched that game on stream. Watch.
And harassment and doxing and people doxing my friends and so much horrible, vile things, all from streaming a fucking video game.
So this wasn't just harassment, this was doxing, attempts to dox her personal information, successful attempts to maybe dox her friends. I don't want to imagine the things she was receiving in DMs, for example. And this isn't just some crying, this is intense crying, like she's been going through it. Of course, some of the amazing individuals who were behind this movement would see this clip on Twitter and would have some very productive things to say. Like, this is a volcano lava hot take, but this action should be encouraged. Or boohoo plus cry louder plus maybe listen to trans and Jewish people. But what was really interesting here was the approach that both Vishoujo and some of its talents took when Silverveil was practically at one of the lowest points of her content creation career. One of the only people who would speak out in support of Silverveil was actually Ironmouse, saying nobody deserves to feel threatened and live in fear every day of their life. That is not right. Specifying that there are ways to support the LGBTQ+ in positive ways, while hoping that people become a little kinder to each other. But here's where things get very tricky. Around the time this harassment campaign was taking place, Fruit, who is another Vishoujo talent, would tweet, "It costs me $0 every day to be kind and accept people for who they are. So for every like this tweet gets, I'm donating $1 to Mermaids, a charity that supports gender diverse children." Seeing that no one except for Ironmouse had said anything about Silverveil being harassed, and this was the closest thing that Fruit had said about the situation, people immediately assumed that this was Fruit subtweeting Silverveil, giving her sort of a middle finger, so to speak. Now, of course, Fruit would quote tweet this tweet 12 hours later and specify, "My twin brother means the world to me more than anyone. It means a lot to me to support and protect people like him any way I can. If there's a better transgender supporting charity to donate to, I can just switch. It's not that deep." So yeah, Fruit probably saw everything going on surrounding Hogwarts Legacy and decided, you know what, instead of hate, let's just donate. Let's just use money to donate to this cause. But of course, by that time, it was too late. People had already made up their mind about this tweet, and it made many assume, oh, wait a second, is there trouble at home at Vishoujo? Are the talents not all friends? What else are they hiding from us? And what didn't help at all is that during this time period, Vishoujo had said nothing. They were in complete and utter radio silence. They had not come out in support of Silverveil. They had not commented on Fruit's tweet. And it made people start questioning, why is Silverveil even in an agency? Because right now it's as if she's an indie VTuber being harassed all alone and not having the support of anyone, including her own agency. Because in the end, she was a Vishoujo talent. And her being harassed like this was ruining her reputation in some way, which also in turn ruined Vishoujo's reputation and the talents within it. In fact, regarding Silverveil, the only thing we'd hear would only be a couple months later in a shock announcement that no one was expecting. It would be Vishoujo posting this on April 26, 2023, saying, "To our community, Silverveil and Vey have chosen not to renew their contracts at Vishoujo. We respect their decision and want to thank them for helping make Vishoujo what it is today. They will also retain their IP so they can continue as the creators you love. We wish them the best on the next leg of their journey. Sincerely, the Vishoujo team." So look, by 2023, when it came to graduations, people were used to how Nijisanji and Hololive did them, which was one at a time, spaced out, with a graduation stream in which talents say goodbye. This was an absolute shock on every level, not to mention that a founding member and the first external member to have joined the company were both leaving. And as soon as this announcement had come out, they would quote tweet it with this image of her in Silverveil saying, "Indie bitches." Naturally, seeing how rare a double graduation was and seeing this quote tweet made many people question what was going on and come up with conspiracy theories. So hours later, Vey would clarify, "Since this post got so much traction and people are speculating as to why I have left and blaming other talent for it, it's nothing like that at all. I left because new contracts didn't make any financial sense to me." So you see, again, there was this rumor that the talent at Vishoujo was not in agreement, that the girls were fighting, especially with the conspiracy theories running rampant over Fruit's tweet in regards to Silverveil. Vey would continue, "I can't speak for Silver because we didn't leave together. We were just announced on the same day. Can't say much else because of legal shit and stuff, but please be kind to everyone involved. Don't make weird rumors up to control your own narrative. TLDR, left because new contract, no good. And for all indies, always hire a lawyer to read through any contract, however minor it may seem. I know it's a scary process to think about, but you'll be so fucking thankful down the line. Hire lawyers that know what the industry standards are. Okay, have a nice day, you fuckers." So this was her attempt to completely kill any speculation or conspiracy theories surrounding her graduation. She just wanted to move on as soon as possible. Silverveil would echo the same exact statement on her stream, saying this, watch.
Anyone missed the announcement? Vey and I are both leaving. We were announced the same day, but it has nothing to do with each other. It was independent. We are just being announced on the exact same day.
So this whole thing was kind of messy. Why announce two talents at the same time and have to make them both make separate statements saying, guys, it just so happens that we both wanted to leave the company and they announced us on the same day. It was definitely a shock, but hey, at least Vishojo kept their word. They would be keeping their IP. This wasn't a graduation in the traditional sense because nothing would be changing. They would continue streaming just like they did before joining Vishojo. And so as soon as people were starting to finally process this news and maybe even start to move on, just a few days later, Vishojo would come up with another bombshell saying, to our community, we'd like to inform you that Nyaners has decided not to renew her contract with Vishojo. We fully support her decision and are grateful for her contributions to the growth of Vishojo. Nyaners will retain her IP, ensuring she can carry on as the beloved creator you know. We wish her the best in her future endeavors. Sincerely, the Vishojo team. This was another complete shock. Okay, listen, one founding member, the first member to join, and another founding member in the span of 1 week? Nyaners would release her own statement saying, after much consideration, I've decided not to renew my contract with Vishojo and return to being an indie. This decision is my own and not a reflection of my relationship with any of the other members, and it is something I have been seriously deliberating for a while. I'm deeply appreciative of all the opportunities that being a member of Vishojo has presented over the past 2 years and wish everyone, staff and fellow talent alike, all the best. While this change likely comes as a surprise, it won't change who I am, any of my content, or who I choose to collaborate with moving forward. My streams will continue as usual. I'm looking forward to seeing what the future will bring in this new chapter. Thank you all for your support and understanding. Nyaners. So again, dispelling the rumor that no, this is not because other talent in the agency is pissing me off or is being toxic. This is my own decision and I'm leaving with no drama. I just want to put this behind me. But how can we just put this behind us and move on so easily when so many members had left in just the span of a few days? Vishojo had 10 members by this point, and they had essentially lost 30% of their talent roster just like that. If the talents were truly happy, then that wouldn't have happened. So what the hell was going on? More importantly though, was anyone else going to leave as well? And that's when people understood there was a risk that Iron Mouse could leave. And if she did, this talent agency would have, without exaggeration, imploded in just a few months afterwards. So people were obviously concerned. They loved Vishojo, they loved the talent there, they didn't want to see it implode. So many were asking Iron Mouse, hey, like, are you gonna stay? Are you gonna leave? To which she responded. This is a clip that was in False ID's video from over 2 years ago, in which she says that she's currently negotiating. Watch.
Have to make this very large. Good news or bad news? I don't know. I don't know if it's good news or bad news. Leaving Vishojo, guys, I'm still in contract negotiations. So
this definitely didn't reassure her audience or anyone who was a fan of Vishojo. Iron Mouse was in contract negotiations. 3 talents had just left. If she leaves too, we can safely say the agency's not really going anywhere. So without exaggeration, it was facing an existential threat. And seeing how often people would see VTuber agencies establish themselves then literally fall apart within a few months, the same fate awaiting Vishojo didn't really seem that far-fetched. Except it was, because shortly after this, in the summer of 2023, Vishojo would begin a new chapter that would thrust it straight into its golden age, where it finally became a global contender. One could say that Vishojo started taking their first steps towards a golden age barely 10 days after Nyaners had officially left the company. Yes, even though the entire agency's future was being put into question, they managed to surprise everyone on May 11th, 2023, when they would announce that they'd be adding the first English-speaking VTuber to their roster since Weibei in 2021. And that VTuber would be Henya the Genius. Someone who already was very beloved and had one hell of a fan base in another corporation and had left it recently, not being able to keep her IP and restarting in Vishojo. And one of the many things that made her special is that she was both fluent in English and Japanese, which helped her further bridge the gap between Vishojo and their Japanese subsidiary. But the agency wasn't done here. Just barely a few months later, they would also recruit yet another new member by the name of Giga, another independent VTuber that was already established and had a fan base that was going to follow her into Vishojo. What made these two talents special is that they weren't problematic at all. If anything, they were wholesome and well liked by the community. This was Vishojo heading in the right direction, but it was them barely getting started. You see, at the time, one couldn't simply ignore just how big Nijisanji's English branch had gotten. Just like their main competitor Hololive, they had established some very well-known household names in the VTubing industry, and with them came very passionate and sometimes rabid fan bases that would do anything to show their love to their idols. In other words, they bought any merch you threw at them, okay? They were money printers. So when some talents started to all of a sudden start leaving Nijisanji around the end of 2023, Vishojo would take notice and take full advantage of the situation, announcing the recruitment of a new member very shortly after Giga. This time, it was Kuro, an ex-Nijisanji VTuber that had a very loyal fanbase and had an established identity in the scene. But they were on a roll because barely 2 weeks afterwards they would announce yet another member joining, Matara-kan, also being a very well-established ex-Nijisanji member. These two would have an indescribable positive impact on Vishojo's PR. Kuro would bring in some much-needed humor and expertise from his days at Nijisanji running a big fanbase, and Matara would come in to act like some sort of a maternal figure to the Vishojo talent roster, balancing the chaotic energy exhibited by the rest of the roster. All this would serve as the building blocks, as the foundation to the most important moment in Vishojo's history, when they would take complete advantage of the downfall of one of their biggest competitors. On February 2024, we would witness the biggest PR disaster in VTuber history, when Selon Tatsuki, one of Nijisanji's English VTubers, would attempt to leave this planet twice, citing the toxic work culture at Nijisanji as the main reason. And instead of trying to fix or even salvage the situation, Nijisanji decided to terminate her. What would follow would be mass graduations of the English branch of Nijisanji, and their reputation would never get close to recovering. Vishojo would see this and would take this opportunity to devour Nijisanji's massive rotting corpse in order to replace them and claim their spot of top 2 VTuber agency competing directly with Hololive. On April 2024, they would recruit Michi Mochievi, another very well-beloved and established ex-Nijisanji talent. And what would happen afterwards is the complete and full redemption of Vishojo's reputation. You see, these ex-Nijisanji talents like Michi would go on to praise how happy they are at Vishojo in comparison to their previous workplace, being Nijisanji, saying that they've never worked at a place like this before, that their past workplace made them feel terrible, and that here they feel valued. They feel like an actual person. We also would hear something very shocking, the fact that Kuro had over 350,000 British pounds in tax debt, because apparently his previous company, Nijisanji, would tell him that they'll handle taxes for him and take a cut from his paycheck, only to end up not paying a single dollar. He was essentially scammed. So he reached out to Iron Mouse for help in order to figure out what was going on, and she referred him to the CEO of Vishojo, Gunrun, who personally took the time out of his day to help him and put him in touch with an accountant and eventually recruited him into Vishojo. I mean, guys, at this point, can we just stop calling him Gunrun? Can we call him Gun Angel? Because, I mean, seriously, Vishojo seemed to be the complete opposite of Nijisanji. Now, this same rhetoric was echoed by Matara in a discussion with Kuro, in which they were reminiscing how their former company mentally affected them and how happy they are at Vishojo today. I mean, look, by that point, this sentiment was pretty common to find. People felt that Vishojo was the savior of the VTuber industry, the agency correcting Nijisanji's mistakes and treating their talent like actual human beings, with no toxic workplace and no predatory contracts. And seeing that Iron Mouse had extended her contract with them, they had essentially gone from being a company facing an existential threat to being on top of the world, and things were only getting started for their golden age. Iron Mouse would keep beating records and would get interviewed by the Rolling Stone. Kei-san would audition to be in the game Yakuza Like a Dragon and would successfully manage to get in. Vishojo was opening up art galleries in Japan, showcasing art of their VTubers. And Iron Mouse would successfully become the most subscribed to channel on Twitch of all time, giving away half the money she raised to the Immune Deficiency Foundation, a charity that means a lot to her since she suffers from CVID, a condition that weakens her immune system to the point where she can't even go out. This foundation aims to find a cure, and seeing how much this meant to her, the CEO would personally bring her on a walk for the Immune Deficiency Foundation, using one hell of a high-tech setup where she can see everything that's happening through this camera. But that's not all. I mean, Gunrun would care so much about his talents that he would personally accompany Iron Mouse when she would win the Best VTuber Award in the Streamer Awards at the end of 2023. And if that wasn't enough to impress you, then maybe their global marketing campaigns would, plastering the faces of all their talents in Japan, more specifically a metro station in Shinjuku. I mean, guys, by this point, everyone, whether big or small as a content creator, wanted a piece of Vishojo. The idea of joining such an agency that held their talents to such high regards and would give every talent a manager to handle day-to-day tasks while they would focus on what was important to them simply sounded amazing. It seemed that this talent freedom approach was truly working, and Vishojo knew exactly what they were doing. But hold your horses. I mean, this success does come with a price. Yes, there is such a thing as suffering from success, and VShojo was about to find that out. Seeing that everyone wanted to join them, many were wondering what had happened to the audition form that was posted back in 2021. Was that simply to recruit an already established independent streamer like Vebe? Many would start making a joke that VShojo was nothing more than a glorified Nijisanji retirement home. That, or they would just hire friends, that they were a nepotism-centric company. The problem was that this criticism didn't reach the company, it would reach the talents directly, causing someone like Zentreya to reach a breaking point. With her tweeting this out during July 2024, saying, "Heartbreaking and disheartening to see so many people pushing the idea of Zen friends only when each person I found had to work their way to the top regardless. I have other friends who don't want to join who are working their asses off and doing amazing things. I even pushed management to open auditions again finally after so long and to scout for new and upcoming people to mesh with. I wanted to meet new people and let the others get a sense for them as well and see who would fit into the puzzle. Then I came to a realization that even if we bring in a new person, people will claim we focused on new people instead of helping others who are halfway to success, or other larger creators be a part of something fun. Either way is a loss. I just wanted to do right and help smaller and up and coming as well as the potential to bring someone on the rise. Management and Gunrun are working their butts off to do all of this, and now I feel as though I made a mistake in doing this. Who knows? But I hope you all still try because I started from the bottom too and I put in the work." This tweet was made in reference to VShojo finally reopening applications after 3 years on July 10th, 2024, a day before Zentreya's tweet. And putting aside the fact that some talents were literally getting harassed over this was actually a net positive for VShojo. You had droves of undiscovered talented VTubers, established VTubers, big, medium, small VTubers, all wanting to join your agency because goddamn, you guys were doing a great job. I mean, this post alone had over 5 million views, over 1,000 replies, with some very big independent VTubers commenting on it. If you hadn't noticed yet, this is what a golden age looks like. And around 5 months later, Ama Lee, who is a very well-established voice actor, VTuber, and singer, would make the announcement that she was joining VShojo. This was of course huge for the agency, but at the same time, Ama Lee noticed that there were some replies that were fairly negative about her joining. Feeling the need to specify, this reveal has been in the works for almost a year and a half. And just to clear up any confusion, I was not a part of the auditions, but I'm so excited for the future debuts of new members. This is simply how badly people were clawing at the chance of joining this agency. She had to actually specify this. But VShojo had made an entire subsidiary in Japan, not just for Keisan and Amamiya Nazuna. They had very big plans for the country in which VTubing originated in. At the end of 2024, they teased 4 different Japanese talents joining their roster, this time under a wave or a team called VShojo Nova. And by the beginning of July 2025, they would unveil it, launch it alongside Universal Music Group. This wasn't just yet another VTuber wave, these were superstars in the making. I mean, at this point, maybe Gunrun saying back in 2020 that VShojo was going to be a new era of VTubing wasn't so far-fetched. Not only were they on top of the world, but now they were considered a direct competitor to Hololive and someone who had very easily outdone Nijisanji. The sky was the limit, and if this company became worth $1 billion in the coming years, no one would have been surprised. But you see, speaking about money, how did they make it exactly? You see, this was a question that would start to be asked as early as 2023. Agencies typically took a cut of sponsors, donations, subs, and merch from talents in order to sustain their business. But VShojo would only do so, as far as we knew, whenever they brought in a sponsor and whenever there was merch on the line, never taking any of the donations or sub money of their talents. I personally got the chance to speak with someone notable in the content creator industry, and they told me that VShojo for them was a red flag since 2023, truly wondering how this company even functioned and made money. This Redditor right here was also wondering the same thing, and I mean, look at the top comment. It said, "I think there's a running joke about this because I swear I've seen Henya, Keisan, and Giga all commenting I have no idea how VShojo makes money, insinuating their contracts are really good." I'm sure there's a really good explanation, but my headcanon is that Gunrun and VShojo really just enjoy what they do and don't make a ton of money doing it, but live comfortably enough because their hobby is being support for the talents. But by that point, VShojo was so well established that people who were asking these questions, who were showing these concerns, were simply called stupid and people moved on. This would of course be the sentiment until the end of their golden age, when cracks in the company would start being very hard to ignore and multiple very shocking announcements would be made. On March 6th, 2025, Matara-kan would tweet this, saying, "Today's the day, Momos, send me your energy, I need it. She didn't really specify further, but it seemed like it was a very important day for her and she was asking her community to send her good vibes. We wouldn't hear from her again until 2 days later, on March 8th, in which she would tweet out, "Hey everyone, as I said on stream today, I'll be taking an immediate emergency time off. Some things came up that I cannot address right now, but I promise you, you will know soon enough. All is good, I am good, I just need to deal with it all ASAP. I love you, Momos." Now look, at this point people were hoping for the best. It's not the first time a big VTuber took a break like this, but it definitely seemed very sudden, and she definitely was trying very hard to reassure her community that nothing was truly wrong. Except something was wrong, and we would find that out almost a month later. As the Cinder incident was taking over the entirety of the VTubing community, something else would creep up on the side and shock everyone. One day after Cinder had posted her infamous apology, Vishojo would post this, saying, "Dear community members, we want to share that after careful thought and consideration, we've made the difficult decision to formally part ways with Matara on May 5th, 2025. We're genuinely grateful for everything she's brought to Vishojo and wish her the best moving forward. Goodbyes are never easy, and we understand many of you deeply care about Matara as we do. The best way to support us both right now is with kindness, understanding, and respect for everyone's feelings and privacy during this transition. We're committed to our incredible talent, community, and the values we share. Thank you all for your empathy and continued support." To say that people were absolutely shocked by this is an understatement. As I said, up until that point, Matara was seen as the motherly figure of the entire talent roster. She'd be someone with an opinion that was highly valued in the company, and would, throughout many occasions, sing the praises of Vishojo. So why the hell was she graduating, and why was it so sudden? Well, here's what she had to say about it. "Vishojo made the decision to part ways with me on March 6th, effective May 5th. I thank the girls, plus Kuro, for the great